The opinions expressed are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect the official positions of the sponsors, advertisers, or presenters. Advertising does not imply endorsement by the sponsors and presenters.
Hey guys, and welcome back to the Lighting Controls Podcast. We have another fantastic guest for you today, and we seem to be on a roll with guests who've been on the show previously, so why not have another one back? But before we jump into the conversation, let me take a minute to remind everyone today's episode is presented by the newly rebranded LCA, the Lighting Controls Academy.
And it's financially supported by the National Association of Innovative Lighting Distributors, or NAILD. Check out our website, lightingcontrolspodcast.com. Got all of our content, including episodes with our previous guests who are recurring guests, so check them out. But also information about the new NAILD LSC, Lighting Specialist and Control Certification, so check it out if you're interested. But also, huge shout out to our sponsor for this episode. We cannot do this without the support of our sponsors, and especially this sponsor, the DALI Alliance, DALI, if you're unfamiliar with them, check them out, DALI-Alliance. They have their summit coming up, which is going to be happening right after NY Controlled. So if you're going to be in town for NY Controlled, you should definitely stay around for October 16th, the DALI Summit. It's going to be at the Parsons School of Design, still in New York City, but just around the corner from where NY Controlled is going to be happening. So I definitely recommend that you check it out. They had their first event last year. I was attending it. I highly recommend it. It's a great conversation, opportunity to be in on the ground floor. DALI Alliance is really trying to make traction within North America and it seems to be taking on. And so there's a lot of steam going on behind it. And if you want to be a part of the conversation, I highly recommend that you check it out. But let's get into the conversation. So today we have a returning guest, Carol. Carol, do you mind just giving a quick breakdown on who you are and what you do for people who may have not heard the previous episode you were on?
Sure. So I started as a lighting designer in New York, working at Horton Lees before it was HLB. So I came up through the perspective of Jules Horton, quality of light, never want to see the source, very sensitive to glare. Very exacting guy. And so it's a great way to start. I got involved with the ILD very early and the IES very early. Fresh meat, here we go. Let's just get her involved and tell her all that, so I very quickly got engaged. And before you know it, I was working on codes and standards. So there were two things. There was the New York State was trying to do a law that would have essentially turned lighting into a refrigerator, treating it like an appliance. And Howard Branston at the time he was on the warpath. So I was part of Howard's entourage, so to speak, in terms of dealing with that. And then, of course, 90.1. That was way before there were actually models to actually quantify things. So I go back and the involvement with the energy code stuff. I got involved. I became part of a committee that was national and was hired by PNNL, so Pacific Northwest National Laboratory. So I went there, had a great time, an incredible environment to work, really incredible. And I was there for 17 years, and since then I've been at 3 different manufacturers, and now I am representing the DALI Alliance. So I've done global luminaire and controls. Startup just controls sensors and medium-sized luminaires. So it's been great because I feel like at this point, I have that drive to transform the marketplace, which is just sort of a DNA level thing at this point. And I'm a big believer, a legit believer in digital lighting. And so I've been working on that for a very, very long time. And now being at the DALI Alliance feels like a really good fit for me because having been involved in all those different capacities, I know the pain points, right? I know the pain points. I know the what makes the world turn if you're, So, and I can't say that I'm super deep in any of those because I only spent half my career doing manufacturing, but it really matters, to understand what's going on. You look at a problem, look at a pain point, say, I remember that. Yeah. So that's that's my background. Yeah.
No, totally. And Thank you. And thank you for coming back on the show. It's great to have people like you coming back on the show and continuing to further these conversations that we're having, because there's a lot to talk about when it comes to lighting controls. I feel like every single time, we get somebody new as a guest, they're like, what are we going to talk about for 45 minutes? And it's like, oh, don't worry. It's going to go by real quick. And so, it feels like we don't ever have enough time to really talk about everything. So it's great to have people like you coming back on the show and share your experience and knowledge. And so,
Well, thank you. Thanks for another opportunity. It's a great.
Sure.
No, seriously, I'm excited about it. I think it's I really appreciate the chance to do this dialogue. When I listen to the other ones that you do, I feel like it's a great education and filling a significant gap. So thanks for having me.
I'm glad to hear that. Thank you.
Thank you.
But yeah, so I mean, from your experience and from your knowledge here, really supporting DALI, I feel like there's still so much pushback within the North American market when it comes to DALI adoption. And so, having seen the global lighting world, there's much more adoption of DALI in other places in the world. And I'm just curious if you can kind of share some of that knowledge. What's going on? How has it taken traction?
I think part of that story is the timeline of DALI and what's happened over time. Sorry, I keep touching my ear to make sure it doesn't fall out. So DALI began a long time ago, and it was really about the protocol, the communication, the two-way communication, and the digital back and forth, the addressability. So DALI stands for Digital Addressable Lighting Interface. That was the beginning, right? And that was the beginning of it. It didn't exist before. So that in itself was a really big deal. And that got put together into a series of specifications, and people started to build to those specs. And when it got implemented, there were some challenges because there were some differences between the systems and such. DALI kept working on things and then moved into a stage. It's kind of a game changer, crossed over into a whole other world where there's now certification, and there has been for 2017, I think. So that just changed everything, because at that point, you know that you're going to have a reliability and a repeatability to the products, and that's not something that you get elsewhere. Right. And it's not, So the reason, coming back to the question about why hasn't it been more adopted here, is that mostly, oh God, I could say so many things, like North America really knows how to hold a grudge. It's just, we're a very gossipy crew. I can say that because I'm part of it. We're a really gossipy crew, but we're all connected too. We have a great camaraderie. We have a lot of things going on in the industry. And so there's good and bad, but it was one of those things where people didn't really look back, didn't stay up on it, And meanwhile, there was this tremendous progress being made, and folks didn't really know. So things normalized here around proprietary systems, which grew and became wonderful and all that sort of thing. And meanwhile, the interoperability and the feature sets, et cetera, that DALI can do, people were unaware. And so that's the start of it, is, why has there been less adoption? It's because, people remember pre-certification more than after, because they just, the before and the after. Now that certification is in place, it's very different, right? So the protocol is the same. A lot of the specifications, parts, right? The proper terminology in DALI land is parts. The basis is the same, right? So the parts remain the same, and they just get built upon. So, but I think it's really changing.
That's actually
you said earlier, it's shifting, right? People are hearing about it. They're curious about it.
Yeah. Well, and just to kind of step back for a second, you say parts. There's still so many groups out there that say types. And so just curious if you can kind of reveal a little bit about the difference between parts and types.
So you mean parts and specs, or parts and
Yep.
types.
Well, like DALI Part 250 versus
Oh, oh,
DALI
oh, oh,
Type
oh, oh.
8.
Okay. Okay. Oh gosh.
Or
Okay.
were
Yeah.
you talking about the actual parts and pieces?
I was now I was talking about the parts, which are the different. So the DALI, probably the best way to answer your question is the specifics about what people hear, which is DT8 and
Right,
DT6. Right. And so a lot of people think that DT6 is for color. It's for color tuning,
right.
and that's not really the case. All it really does is it's a
Hmm.
dimming. But DT8 is
Right.
designed so that you've got your color tuning all in the same place, so you don't need two drivers anymore. You don't have to deal with that, which is challenging. Better if it's digital,
Sure.
but it's you want to have it
Right.
on one driver. Yeah. Did I say ballast before? Oh my God, I
I
think
don't think so.
I
But
didn't hear you
I
say
mean,
ballast.
that
Okay,
was
okay. Every
historically where
time
it
that
started with
happens,
ballast.
it's yeah,
Yep.
that's true. That's true. But every time I do that,
No,
I go.
no worries.
Anyhow,
I mean,
so
yeah.
so
So I
it's
mean,
mostly about that. That's the most noticeable use of tea is that it's that, and the parts is the thing we really should be talking about, because the
hmm
parts are where you see which things are required at the base level in order
hmm
to be a DALI system, and then which things have been added on top of it. And so this might get us into the difference between D4I and DALI 2 and
sure.
and DALI Plus. And that's a really important conversation. So to give you an example, D4I, um, when sorry, when when DALI 2 started, you're making me laugh. When DALI 2 started and the certification launched, that effectively
hmm
was everything everything after that is DALI 2. So that's part
Right.
of the confusion is people think it's a product, and it's not a product. It's more like an evolution. It is
hmm
inclusive of everything. And so we've learned in North America that it's not quite so confusing elsewhere because there's more familiarity, but here we've realized that there has been a lot of confusion around the difference between DALI 2 and D4I and DALI Plus. And really, so
hmm
we've changed our terminology a bit. Everything is still technically all the same, but DALI 2 wired systems is the way that I talk about it, and that most of us have been
Right.
sort of growing into. Um, and D4I with a wireless layer, right? So when you hear that, you
hmm
know that it's DALI in both cases. Both of them are fully certified. And
hmm
the difference is that the DALI 2 wired systems says everything right there, right? So if it's a wired
hmm
system, it's going to be, I mean, think linear fixtures, and your driver's not always in the same place, and your driver's there managing the milliamps along with a whole bunch of other things, and it's not like a trough for a lot of the time, right? So it can be downlights, it can be troughers, it can be linear, and a wired system can handle that very easily, right? I mean, that's what they're
hmm
designed to do, and
Hmm.
the design of the project works with that. So that's normal. It's just normal, right? So the DALI 2 wired systems are normal, except that they're digital, and because they're digital
hmm
bone dressable, they're better. But in terms of the way you do a lighting design and the engineering, it's all the same. D4I is an intraluminaire system architecture, and so
hmm
intraluminaire means everything's happening inside. And it was designed exactly for that reason, so that you can have integral sensors and everything's going to be the same, one to the next to the next. So you have
hmm
compulsory features. You know that you're always going to have asset information. So that is information about what kind of fixture, what kind of what kind of um, light source do you have? What's the voltage?
hmm
So there's information in there that is really important, and you're going to get it every time you get D4I. So the fault diagnostics is going to be every time you get D4I. The energy is going to be every time. Um, and while there are certain compulsory things in DALI 2 wired systems, there are other things that are a bit more a la carte. And so think in terms of DT8. Everybody knows if you're going to get a DALI DT8 driver for color tuning or color control, or because it's more
hmm
than just tuning, it's actually quite
Right.
capable. Uh, if you know that you need to ask for that, and it's kind of the same thing with the other things. Yeah. So emergency, you need to be specific about it. And so that is, that is hopefully I described that well enough. DALI Plus is quite new. It's been
Right.
a year and a half since the certification program was launched. The language has been done for quite some time, but and that the easiest way to think about DALI Plus is it's exactly like DALI except without the wires. So the first release is DALI Plus with thread, and so that's how the communication layer happens. So hopefully that's a little bit more clear to people, because it's and that's part of what we're talking about at the summit. You've got a big old grin. You guys are just like, you've got this smirk.
No,
Okay,
no.
go ahead. Say what you're smirking about. Go ahead.
No, you're good. I have a very sneaking suspicion that there still may be a lot of people listening who may still be very confused, who just hear, okay, they hear DALI, and then they hear DALI 2, and they hear D4I, and then they hear DALI Plus, and then they heard you say that DALI, D4I is wireless, but DALI 2 is wired. But are the two compatible? Can they work together? Like, I'm sure people still have a lot of questions and understanding of how these three can work together. Do they work together? Can they not work together? And there's just, I think that's a lot of the confusion.
Yes. Yeah. So I'm gonna back up and do a sort of a couple of simplifications here. If you're doing a new construction or a major renovation project where you need to pull the wires, you're going to be using a DALI 2 wired system most of the time. If you're going to have integral sensors, that may be different. But the large majority of the time, if you're doing new construction or major renovation, you're going to be using DALI wired systems, because that's what always happens when you're doing new construction. You have wires, you have drivers, and new lighting design with architectural lighting fixtures. The D4I is DALI up to the point, you get the driver, and then you go to the sensor, and the sensor is communicating on a wireless layer, right? So DALI, wireless layer. The wireless layer can be either Bluetooth or Zigbee based, and we have developed interfaces to go with these two. So that's that. So it's either going to be DALI D4I with Bluetooth or DALI D4I with Zigbee. We see the majority of I shouldn't be talking about more or less, but there's been a lot of, let's just say there's been a lot of evolution over time with the Bluetooth systems, and they've released more evolution. And most recently, they have the same sort of requirement as DALI does, which is they call it qualification, but it's the same sort of thing where there's testing. The main thing is that DALI partners with others, right? So when we say D4I with a wireless layer, the layer is by others. But everything else is, so the data that's going on, the protocol, the energy monitoring, fault diagnostics, all those things are still the same. But if you think in terms of projects, that's going to be your easiest. And outdoor, don't let me forget outdoor. Outdoor is D4I is a slam dunk.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, I think that what you're dealing with is three different solutions, really. You know, with DALI 2, you're dealing with, like you said, a new construction wired system that doesn't necessarily need integrated sensors, doesn't need that aux power to power additional components and have that identification information. If you are going to triple LC, for instance, you would definitely want to have a D4I driver. But at the same time, it doesn't have to be DALI connecting those D4I drivers. It can be Bluetooth, it can be Zigbee, it can be really anything. You can have basically a networking protocol layer in between your D4I drivers and your front end keypads or whatever. However, you can have DALI as well. You can have DALI 2 or DALI Plus, which is the wireless version. And so as a result, you really have a mix match solution that even plays friendly with some of the proprietary systems that are out there.
I'd say yes and no, meaning that the interfaces we've developed are specifically to those two protocols, and we've worked with those organizations. So that's a very precise thing that we chose to do in terms of a partnership and working together on developing the specs. And the certification and that sort of thing. So it's not, I want to be careful to say it's not true that
Mm-hmm.
you can work with any type of Bluetooth system or
Sure.
any type of wireless system.
Right.
It's about partnering with other protocols so that we meet the market in a way that's the best for the market, right? We're collaborative in how we
Yeah.
function. So
No,
that's,
thank you for that
the
clarification.
yeah, no, that's fine. It's an important clarification, and it also reminds me that when it comes to layers, the word scares people unless you're talking about layers of light. Um, it's these layers of communication and product and wireless. The they are a bit confusing to folks, and that's why
Mm-hmm.
it's I do believe that over time, if you speak in that way, it does help because,
Mm.
so for example, the DALI products are interoperable. They've been tested. They've been certified. They're part of a global open standard, and
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
because they start at DALI, then we do the certification, then it gets promulgated into the IEC. So that all happens, but above is the lighting control system. And
Mm-hmm.
so there are many lighting control systems which are different, proprietary in how they do their lighting controls, proprietary interfaces. There's nothing, proprietary is not a bad word. And that's
Right.
one of those things that I have said for many, many years. Proprietary is not a bad word. If you don't have proprietary, you don't have competition, you don't have differentiation.
Mm-hmm.
What I like is the
Right.
balance between something that is maintainable by the user,
Yep.
the owner and the owner and the operator over time. So you can have, hypothetically speaking, if you have sensors down here, but you've got DALI in the middle, and then you've got
Mm-hmm.
your control system up here, you're always going to have that middle layer that can be replaced.
Right.
And that's the main thing. Nobody's trying to get rid of anybody at all.
Right.
That's not,
Well, no, and
but I feel like
I think that
sometimes it becomes a persona battle, and it's really not, that's not the case, right? We're just
right.
trying to get folks to work with a communicable system that's open and interoperable because it's
Right.
better for everybody over time. Yeah.
Right.
Right.
Well, and it is a good point because I get asked this question all the time. It's like, which protocol do you think is going to win? And it's like, it's not about winning, guys. It's
Yeah.
everybody's got, they're providing something, they're adding to the
Yep.
conversation. We're all trying
Mhm.
to get to the same goal there, which is, really usable and user friendly lighting control systems that work. And how we achieve that, it's going to take an army anyways. So we may as well work together. And our two sponsors for the podcast outside of the DALI Alliance, MaxLight and MW Connect, keep saying competition is great, bring it on, because
Yep.
that's how they
Mhm.
innovate. So,
Yeah.
we're seeing that
Yeah.
more and more. We're seeing less of this campy, this is, I'm going to own everything and get out of my way, and more of okay, how do we, still be competitors but collaborate at the same time.
Right.
Exactly. It's about where to align and where to be different. And I've been saying this exact same thing for a very long time, is that it's important not to see it as a polarization. I think
Mm-hmm.
a lot of the issues here in North America, in my opinion, come back to education and
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
experiences. So
Yep.
one of the things we'll be talking about at the summit is, and we really like the street conversation, right? We will be asking people, what are the barriers?
Mm-hmm.
Talk to us. We've got a
Right.
panel of industry experts who are going to be answering those questions. Here's where I see a
Right.
challenge. Here's where I see a challenge. And if it were different this way or that way, then it would work better. And then we're going to talk about what is DALI doing to help break those barriers
Mm-hmm.
down. Because again, letting people know what's going on, right? We heard
Yeah.
last year what people were looking for, so we are working on that. Not to say that this is easy. No big transformation is easy, but we're committed to education, and we're developing a global train the trainer program. As you know, I've been talking to you about trainings, and they're going to be, there's training and then there's educational pieces, if you will, right? So
Mm-hmm.
there's the conference presentations, there's Lighting Controls Academy now.
Mm-hmm.
In those I think of them sort of like prerequisites in a way. is that just to give a working knowledge in North America. Of course, the trainer does come up from basic information, but just you're going to need to hear it more than once. Anything new, you're going to need to hear more than once. So we're doing a lot of different things. We're doing big things. We're doing small things. We're doing global things. We're doing North America things. Yeah, that's what it takes. You guys are laughing at me again. It's
No, we're laughing with you. I mean,
you're laughing with me. Yeah,
very much.
You're basically stating all of the things that we have talked about on previous episodes.
Yep.
It's like it all comes down to education. That is the crux of the matter that everybody points their finger at and says, education is really the problem here.
Yeah. So we're definitely very focused on that. We're also focused on developing some tools and some information that will be very focused. So, for instance, one of them is developing a performance-based, a boilerplate specification that's performance-based language around how do you specify DALI. And it's not member specific in any way. But it will give a tool for lighting designers and engineers to be able to say, oh, here I've got, a specification that I can start with. Starting from scratch, expecting everybody to start from scratch and figuring it, roll up their sleeves and figure it out all on their own. I just don't think that's a reasonable expectation. We need to provide help and information and technical documentation and education, bring it to people. So that's what we're doing. We're releasing new publications, etc. So yeah,
that's awesome.
There's a lot to do.
I mean, and we do know that in North America, people do like to circle the wagons around their specific brands and manufacturers. And so just, given what you learned last year through the DALI Summit and sort of just what you've learned over the last year, what are some of, minus education, which we completely understand, what are some of the biggest pain points that people had or have in sort of North America with having DALI adoption?
Yeah. One of them is, so the best way to speak to this is in persona language, right? Or stakeholders or market actors, whatever you want to call it. People are coming from different perspectives, right? So, and I like to have everybody speak for themselves. So I'm going to take a stab at this, but don't take anything literally, because I'm just sort of, I'm not speaking for everybody. I'm not speaking for every electrician or every lighting designer or anything like that. I'm just giving you feedback on what I've heard. So from a lighting designer perspective, there are a couple of things. One is that ramping up on anything is expensive. People have to learn things. They also need to be, they need to manage risk, right? They need to really know what they're doing, right? They are the experts, so they need to make sure they know what they're doing. So as simple as it sounds, it takes time. So those tools, those educational tools and the specification we're developing, by the way, we're not doing it by ourselves. We have a council of lighting designers who are going to be helping us with that. So it's not, and engineers. So it's a collaboration. So that's realistic, right? The other thing is is this the hill to die on? If you're a lighting designer and you've got a whole bunch of things going on, we know how this marketplace works, right? And there are so many battles to fight that I've heard from a number of people that, it's more of a, they can get their needs met in multiple other ways, not as well, generally speaking. There are there are definitely some proprietary systems that do a great job. The difference of interoperability is not something that the lighting designers see, because they're doing this all pre-installation, right? So the maintenance, fault diagnostics, these are all operational benefits. The issue is that that's desired in the market, right? So lighting designers, that's a pain point.
I would push back
the reps
briefly on just one point, which has been a point of contention for a lot of lighting designers, which is if you have fully interoperable systems as opposed to proprietary systems, you can a la carte select keypads. And so it's no longer you love the keypad of this system, but you hate everything else about the system. you now can just go, I want this keypad, and I want this sensor, and I want like that's
Yeah.
the primary
I hadn't
drive.
heard
But
that, but
to your point,
yeah, I get that. I get that absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
but anyway, so
So
getting
yeah, so
back
we've heard
onto
a number of so we've heard a number of things like that for lighting designers. The other thing that we hear quite often from lighting designers is I do the lighting design, and I do the controls design and the controls intent narrative, and some aspects of the sequences of operations, the SOO. But I'm not the one who does all the drawings, right? I'm not the one who stamps it,
Mm-hmm.
and so we have a lot of hands-on, deep technical work that's done by the engineers, and so it's not
right,
just a question of educating the lighting designers. It's also really important to educate the engineering departments. It's very, very
Yep.
important. So that's one
yeah,
persona, right? So you've got your specifiers, you've got your manufacturers reps, right? And in many ways, there's a similar situation because they're managing
hmm
this, at the ground level and
right,
working very, very hard to make things come together, and it's complicated. It's very complicated, and so you get to a situation where there's a specification, and one rep line has this controls company on their line
Yep.
card, and another rep has two different ones in there, and the features that are being called for might be that this system over here can give you everything except two things they've called for. This one can do everything, but nobody knows about it
mm-hmm.
or how to use it, or this one. It's You've got
right,
so much variety in the
yeah,
manufacturing control systems that if you're trying to do more than just dimming, it can be a real challenge to
yeah,
make sure that you get what you're asking for. So the installers, I think the installers probably don't realize how much they know when it comes to DALI. I don't
yeah.
think it's nearly as hard as they think it's going to be. Um,
Well, and I
Yep.
think there's we've had like Paul Drosen on before to talk about the
mhm,
misconceptions that people have about Dolly,
yeah.
and we're not going to tread too far into that territory. But like one of the things that really blows people's minds if they don't know this is that it's not polarity specific. Like you don't
hmm
have to actually worry about which poles you're connecting most of the devices to, and that
hmm
is like people are just like, wait, what? Like where's the positive,
Wait,
where's the
what?
negative? And it's like,
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah,
you
Yep.
don't need to worry about that. And so I think
yeah.
that sort of thing for some reason has just been pushed down the road because everybody thinks it's like 0 to 10 but digital, and it's like
Yeah, yeah, it's not.
wiring,
Yeah,
like
it's a
using
really
saying
good
gauge
point.
wire,
Yeah.
sure. But
Yeah, no,
yeah, I
you're making
think
a really good point. Yeah. Because
go,
it's
yeah.
in terms of where the savings, right? What,
hmm
the we're so used to it, but it needs to be said out loud, what you just said. And the
Mm-hmm.
fact that because of the fact that it's not circuit based, you can fix
hmm
things, right? So the
right,
installation is easier. It is easier to find problems and fix them should they occur. There is, yeah, I mean, there's less copper. It's more sustainable. There's more circularity because of you're less at risk of throwing things away because you have more interoperability, and you don't have the
Mm-hmm.
risk of losing this or this. So, uh, so that's part of it, is that you've got a flexible system. Yeah.
right.
If you really look at the difference between a 0 to 10 wired circuit-based project and a
Mm-hmm.
DALI 2, for instance, wired project, the reality is that you're using less equipment.
hmm
If you really look through what it takes in terms of the quantity of the parts and the cost and everything, there's a lot of savings to be had just because of the way that DALI works, how it functions.
Right.
right.
And in this day and age,
And
people are very serious about sustainability. Think about the copper. Think about the fact that you
Yep.
can
right.
control every single fixture, and you can dim it down whenever,
Yep.
wherever you want, depending on what type of space it is. You can,
Yep.
if you want to, connect it to different zones of HVAC, save money by integrating with the HVAC. You have grid side benefits. There's all kinds of things that uh, people
Right.
see these things
Well,
on
and
a
then,
chart. You've got this pretty picture, and
yeah,
people look at it, and there are all these words, and there are lots of these, and everybody's got great words, and everybody's got great
Yep.
yep,
Marcom. The challenge is just to think carefully through some of the things that we're saying. People are dealing with these challenges every single day, all day long, right? And there are a lot of advantages that come to the table, including for lighting designers, because from a budget
Right.
standpoint and from an after sales standpoint, there's some real benefits.
Yeah. Well,
The owner
and
operators are
that is one of the
go ahead.
interesting things. We had Avi after the DALI Summit come on and talk about his
Mhm,
case study
mhm,
with the drivers and how the
mhm,
contractor was inflating prices, and the distributor might have been
Right.
part of that too, on how a DALI system was quote unquote more expensive than a 0 to 10 volt system. And I think that that's also something that we're seeing a lot of friction with because of
mhm.
maybe misperceptions, but also just the way that things work within North
Yep.
America. There's not as much distribution, wholesale distribution of Dolly equipment,
Mhm,
and therefore
mhm,
there's less incentive to stock up on Dolly equipment.
mhm.
So we are still seeing a lot of shenanigans in the background, even though it might even be the same SKU for the same driver. It still might have a completely different price tag associated with it if you say Dolly.
Yeah, and it's that's why I was saying earlier it's complicated. It's not just a question of where the manufacturers put the price. It's not
Right.
just
Right.
a question of what's in the BOM,
Yes.
Hmm.
the bill of materials, right? It's a question of what happens between here and here, and there's a lot that
Yep.
happens
Yeah.
between here and here, and some of it is we've all we all talk about it. It's not like it's a secret. Overage and other types of things that go on in our market channel. Some of it is people managing risk because they really don't know,
Hmm.
and
Right.
Yep.
so they're pushing back a bit because they have concerns. Uh, yeah, but I mean and that's what we have to work through. The thing that I notice a lot that is not necessarily the most common perspective in the lighting industry is where the owners and operators are coming from. And
Hmm.
Yes.
it's the experience I had at PNNL where I learned about these
Hmm.
things because Department of Energy had alliances, these owner alliances, and so there was the commercial alliance, there was the retail alliance, energy alliance, there was the hospital energy alliance, and these groups were just for owners. There was
Hmm.
That's it. And the labs were there to take on projects that the owners were interested in and execute these projects.
Hmm.
And because of that, I learned a lot about what matters to the owners.
Hmm.
Hmm.
And the reality of our situation in the lighting industry is the owners aren't paying attention to lighting anymore. They think it's all about LEDs. They think advanced
Yep.
Hmm.
controls are too complicated. They don't know the
Yep.
benefits. They often don't know that there is such a thing as a global open protocol for digital lighting.
Yep.
Um,
Right.
you know, and so there's education that needs to happen there too. But I will tell you,
Hmm.
when in conversations about this, and you tell people what I just said, DALI Alliance, Digital Addressable Lighting Interface, global open standard, published at the IEC, blah, 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 fault diagnostics,
Hmm.
energy monitoring, they notice and they're
Yep.
interested.
Yeah.
So the lighting industry, it may not be people that we touch, right? It's not, we're not running around talking to owners all the time or architects or owners reps or, architects sometimes, but things get further away. On the whole, as an industry, do we want to be commodity? I would argue that 0 to 10 is commodity. Or do we
Hmm.
want to be relevant
Hmm.
on the
Hmm.
world stage?
Hmm.
So,
Yeah.
if I'm in the lighting industry and I'm doing my thing and I'm doing whatever my job might be, I'm interested in AI from the perspective of how it can help me, right? There's sessions everywhere you go, everybody's talking about AI. But think about it from the top down. If you have 0 to 10, it's not digital. It's not two-way
Hmm.
Hmm.
communication. It can't
Hmm.
communicate. Even if you have a
Right.
digital front end, you can't talk. If you can't
Right.
talk, can't have a dialogue, you can't have AI. So
Hmm.
all the excitement around this and all the opportunities that
Yep.
people are talking about, you can't get there from here. And if
Right.
you're one of these platforms that are, so when I say platform, I mean um, Siemens has a platform for everything in the building, the
Mm-hmm.
BMS, right? There are
Yep.
other software companies that have platforms for indoor location services, right? And they use different types of technologies to know how many people are in an area. Any of these upper level platforms, they're going to reach down to get the data. And if they
Mm-hmm.
can reach down and get the data from DALI, they know that they're going after the same data in the same format every time. If
Mm-hmm.
they're reaching for data from somebody else's memory banks, then they need an API. APIs are all over the place, but if I'm a platform,
Right.
the less I have to do that, the better, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I want us to be thinking not just about the choir, right? What
Yeah.
what do
Right.
we need as an industry? How do we become more relevant again as an industry? And there are lots of hooks, lots of things we could be doing, but we do have to change it up.
Sure.
Yeah, and you mentioned like the owners and operators, and that's a big piece of it. I think at this point, like moving in that direction to a of truly digital communication and the idea of being able to collect all these data points. But even if you just scale it back to sort of some of the more simple features, if you have an open office or a multi-use space,
Mhm.
and you can, as a designer, can have the best intent working with the owner to design the 0 to 10 system,
Yeah,
but that next group's going to come in and they're going to want it zoned differently. They're going to want something
right.
different. And that's the beauty of, at such a simple level. That is the beauty of a DALI
Mm-hmm.
system, is you just quickly readdress a few things and you redo your zones, and all is right with the world, and you can make it whatever you want. And there are so many stakeholders. Like you said, there's so many people between the reps and the designers and the engineers, but you're right. We really need to get in front of more of the owners and operators and get them to understand everything from the basics of making things so much easier that you can save a lot of money on the back end every time you flip over a space like this,
Yep.
to
Yeah.
then being able to collect all of that data, truly collect that data, not what we're doing currently, and really use that to affect the space and a holistic building approach. And that
Hmm.
is something we can't do now, that we need the digital data for. And so how
Mm-hmm.
can we get in front of more of these owners and operators? What is our path to make that happen, to sort of help this adoption?
Boy, that's a big question. It's one of my favorite questions because um, there's when people talk about owners and operators, there's this. I'm talking about in the lighting industry. There's this feeling of, but we need them to want it. We need them to want it.
Mm-hmm.
If they don't ask, then what? It's just circular sort of thing. Well, they don't
Yep.
know. You don't know. It's
Yeah.
just like, let's get moving, people. So we're
Mm-hmm.
talking to a lot of different folks, and including owners and operators, right? So for instance,
Mm-hmm.
um, on the 21st, I'm going down to a conference which is CRE Tech, which is commercial real estate technology. It's progressive owners and operators. I mean, it's all about them, and so it's they're prop tech, property technology, right? So it's a prop tech world down there, and it's all about digital. How do we make things better? And uh, the folks down there are serious. They're serious. They're building digital twin. They're looking for all the different ways to do this. They're thinking years out. They're thinking about their assets and their properties, and what's the
Mhm.
difference between a tenant property, and what's the difference between something you're going to turn over quickly through a REIT, or and what are those benefits? If you've got something you're turning over, that's one set of needs. If you've got something you're going to hold for a long time, that, for instance, makes fault diagnostics more important.
Mm.
Yeah. So I mean, they need to hear the message, and I can't believe this just came into my head. I do you remember the Got Milk campaign
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
from way back? I'm remembering something. Maybe it was a NEMA conversation from a long, long time ago, where we were talking about how do we get the message that lighting quality matters in front of people who don't know that lighting quality matters. It's always going to be a challenge to get past to the ultimate customer. But if you don't try, you're not going to get there. Are there conversations to be had? Absolutely. We're talking huge. When I went, I forget which one it was, which one of these conferences. It was in the fall, and I talked to a whole bunch of different owners and operators and wrote things down and took names and stuff. And I mean, not to put them on the record or anything, but to remember who I spoke with, and hundreds of millions of it, just huge, mega, right? In terms of you know, how can you be efficient with this? If you work carefully, the global we, work carefully in choosing a few of these progressive owners and operators, some education could go a very, very long way. It is not impossible.
sure.
It is not out of reach, but we need the will to do this together. And it really is it's a choice. We're either going to do this in a way that is a pain point for them, because vendor lock, I know a lot of folks who don't know what that means. Vendor lock is a thing. It is a It is. I mean, you
Spec
hear
lock
that.
is another
You
way
hear
of
that.
referring to it.
Another way of putting
Yep,
it. You hear that over and over and over again at these real estate conferences. Not just about lighting, but about all of these companies. It's a huge pain point for them. So if the lighting industry comes forward and saying, okay, we've got a lot of different control system manufacturers, a whole bunch of luminaire companies, and all kinds of great things, and we are working towards becoming interoperable so that you get to choose what you want, and you can still maintain your building, and you can talk back and forth, and you know what each of these things are doing and all that. So it's I mean, I know I sound a little bit kumbaya about this.
We absolutely need that, though, in this industry. And we're almost out of time here, so I want to package what we've talked about.
I'm not. I have had my own set of pain, so you know it's not really kumbaya.
We've all experienced pain for sure.
I've been doing this for a long time, and I know it's not easy. I'm not trying to make light of these difficulties. I don't want people to think that I'm making light of it. I'm really not. But I also really believe that DALI offers something that you can't get any other way. There's just no other way to do it. So we either do it with DALI or we don't have it. And so, we have to decide now's the time.
Right. And I think that that's a really good way of keying what we've talked about here, because it is sort of this choice that we have in front of us. And it's, there is going to be some challenges to adoption. There's always challenges to adoption of any technology that's new. And it does distill down to that education. How willing are people to learn? How willing are people who know about it to teach? How much effort are people willing to put in to practice what they've learned? All of this, kind of amounts to how much success something has. And there's a lot of discussion with lighting designers about, okay, how far can I kind of bring this based on how little fee I have or how little impact I have on the drawings. So it needs to be more ubiquitous across the board. It can't just be the lighting designers pushing this message forward. We need engineers to be behind it. We need manufacturers to be behind it. We need contractors and distributors. It's going to take a team to be able to overcome this challenge. And so I think, again, focusing back on things like the DALI Summit and kind of coming together and having these hard conversations is really the way that we can move forward, because it doesn't help to just keep, churning in your own head and continuing your own misconceptions or your own theories without actually testing them or debating them with other people. I mean, that was one of the amazing things that I really found at the DALI Summit last year was there was heated debate there on the floor during a presentation. And that was great because we need to have those hard conversations. So, hopefully people have kind of come onto the show who maybe they're not familiar with what DALI is. Maybe they knew about DALI, but now they might be a little bit more curious. But there is so much, and the DALI Alliance is really working hard to provide guidance and support, like, for instance, creating template specs for people to incorporate into their book specs. That is huge, because right now a lot of manufacturers with proprietary systems are doing that. And that's part of how they make their sales, is they offer that as a service. And so kind of mimicking that behavior makes a lot of sense for the DALI Alliance to continue to push forward with what they're trying to achieve with North America.
Yeah, I want to give credit to our members who there is a lot of change happening, and it's not necessarily something you see right away because these kinds of changes take time. But there are some folks that are thinking very differently about this when considering supply chain and such, and they're making different decisions, and and it's exciting, I mean, it's exciting to see that. So
Yeah,
so yeah, I mean, I'm excited about the summit this year as well. I love the real talk. Um, you know me. I can, I can go there,
for
and
sure.
I think that's part of what's appealing about it is that if it's, I don't want to whitewash any fences here, and people at DALI don't either. It's a nonprofit organization, member based, and
Mhm.
uh, so it's not, from our perspective, what we hear from others that come to the summit is very, very important. And in terms of what people get out of it, I mean, if you come to the DALI summit, you will walk away knowing enough to be able to do a DALI project. Doesn't mean that you're going to be able to know every aspect of what to do, but you will know enough about it to be conversant,
Mhm.
to know where to go to get more
Yep.
information, to be able to navigate it, right? And things like what's the
Yep.
difference between the DALI 2 wired system, D4i with a wireless layer, DALI Plus, um, those things that can be very confusing, and they have been in the North American marketplace. You'll come away understanding
Mhm.
that much more so. So that's a big part of it. We've got that. We've got some live demonstrations going on. I want to shout out to Craig Berniker and Parsons for helping
Yes.
us to do this at a much more reasonable cost, and just being gracious hosts. And the students are helping, and I just love the idea of having the students in the audience. It's just really great. So I've known Craig for decades, and you know, um, just a great guy and being very helpful. So it's a wonderful thing to be at Parsons. I just want to make sure that you guys hear that. So he's being very,
Mhm.
very generous and helpful. So
No,
yeah, I hope
totally.
people come. Yeah, and bring your friends. If you're a lighting designer or a distributor or a rep, so for instance, and an engineer who may not be necessarily so focused on all these things we're talking about, but who the engineers are the ones where the rubber meets the road. So we'd like to have more engineers this year. So if you're coming to the summit, or if you're not, please spread the word
Mhm.
and let people know. And you can find it on the DALI Alliance website. So just search, Summit 2025, DALI Alliance Summit 2025, and you'll have all the information you need. If there are questions, just reach out. You can find me on LinkedIn. I'm sorry, I'm laughing because Carol Jones. I don't know if you can find me on LinkedIn. I don't know. But yeah, no, I'm not hard to find.
Mhm.
So yeah, let me know if you have any questions, and I appreciate again you guys making time and space for us to talk about all this. It's an important time of year for us. So thanks for fitting
Yeah,
it in.
definitely.
Awesome, Carol. Thank you so much. Really appreciate the conversation. I will just close this out and remind everyone today's episode is presented by the newly rebranded LCA, the Lighting Controls Academy.
And it's financially supported by the National Association of Innovative Lighting Distributors, or NAILD. Check out our website, lightingcontrolspodcast.com. Got all of our episodes and a whole lot more. But also, huge shout out to our sponsor for this episode, DALI Alliance. If you want to learn more about the DALI Alliance and their summit coming up October 16th in New York City at the Parsons School of Design, check it out, dali-alliance.org. And I think, it's going to be an awesome conversation regardless. I'm going to be there. A lot of other people are going to be there. And one of the things that might be worth considering, it's only $50 for lighting designers and only $100 for manufacturers. That's pretty darn cheap. So it's definitely worth considering. But
And
thank
they'll
you for
get to see
joining
you
us.
again
And
because you're one of our wonderful educators.
yes, I will be presenting as well. And so,
Thank
yeah,
you.
it's going to be a really good time. But thank you for joining us, and Carol, thank you as well. It was an awesome conversation.